Welcome to Faith and Freedom 250, a series from the Herzog Foundation celebrating how faith shaped America's founding and continues to shape our freedom today. In this episode, we look at why America's founders built a nation that rejected the core tenets of socialism, long before socialism even had a name.
When America declared independence from Britain, the founders faced enormous challenges. Not only did they have to win a war against the most powerful empire on earth, but afterwards they would have to frame a government without a king, queen, and their ministers to handle the affairs of a new nation comprised of 13 very different colonies. Among their many concerns was one critical question: how would this new country survive economically now that it had severed ties with its biggest trading partner?
The founding documents accomplished many groundbreaking things, but among the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights, the founders did not establish or ordain an economic system to guide the United States. However, from the dawn of the Revolution through the early days of the Republic, the writings and decisions of statesmen and elected officials show that the new country was firmly planted in a free market system.
In the late 18th century, several economic models existed across the world, including communal systems where work and production served the sole benefit of the community as a whole. Even in early America, some groups practiced communal living. Just a few years before the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the United Society of Believers in Christ's Second Appearing, or the Shakers as they were known, settled in the colonies and established communal societies. Their model foreshadowed ideas that would later evolve into socialism, a system formally described by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels more than half a century later.
Early Americans certainly believed in working together for a common cause. That's how they won the Revolution. Benjamin Franklin captured that spirit perfectly when he said, quote, "We must all hang together, or most assuredly we shall all hang separately," end quote. But when it came to building the new nation, the founders embraced a different economic principle, one based on individual liberty and free enterprise.
So why did the founders support and build a nation based on a free market model? The answer lies in the philosophers who influenced them and the English establishments that they broke from. One of the most significant influences on America's founding generation was John Locke, whose writings deeply shaped Thomas Jefferson and many others. Locke believed that property was a natural right. Jefferson's early draft of the Declaration of Independence even read life, liberty, and the pursuit of property before he softened it to the pursuit of happiness. According to John Locke, private property gave people the means to provide for their families and build a better future, free from the control of kings or lords.
The concept of property, owned privately by individuals and not by government or ruling class, was so important that James Madison wrote about it in his Federalist No. 10 and in his 1792 essay titled Property. He warned against the desire for one faction or the nation or government taking property away from others. Madison argued that the practice of redistribution conflicted with natural law. When socialism was later defined in 1848, that very redistribution became one of its central tenets, the same practice Madison cautioned against decades earlier.
The founders also shared a healthy distrust and fear of a centralized government. They had just escaped the rule of monarchs who controlled every aspect of life, from foreign policy all the way down to the price of tea. So they built a government that decentralized power. They gave authority to elected representatives who answered to the people, established checks and balances to prevent tyranny, and preserved strong powers for the individual states. The federal government was designed to take care of national issues, not local. That same belief that power should be spread out, not concentrated, naturally extended to their views on economics.
Even debates about banking in the early 1800s reflected this. Many leaders feared centralized control over finance. They resisted national banking systems and government-run industries, ideas that would later define socialist economies.
The founders celebrated free enterprise and the dignity of hard work. Benjamin Franklin, perhaps more than anyone, preached the value of industriousness. He called it busyness. He believed that being busy with purposeful, productive work led to success and time for rest and personal pursuits. Early Americans were familiar with his sayings, such as, quote, employ thy time well, if thou meanest to gain leisure, end quote, and, quote, lost time is never found again, end quote. Those weren't just clever sayings. They reflected the American spirit.
This spirit of industriousness found practical reinforcement at the dawn of the Revolution when Adam Smith published On the Wealth of Nations, which many of the founders read and studied. Smith argued that a nation grows stronger when individuals act in their own rational self-interest, working for profit, productivity, and progress. Smith's writing would influence founders such as Alexander Hamilton, our first Secretary of the Treasury, as he developed fiscal policies that would guide the fledgling nation through its first years. Hamilton subscribed to the theory that the economy would flourish through profit and incentives rather than government control, another concept opposite of socialist theories that would develop later.
And of course, there was the unstoppable spirit of the American people themselves. The men and women who built this great nation were ambitious and purpose-driven people. They were determined not only to form a new nation, but to forge better lives for themselves and their families. They didn't wait for someone else to provide. They took responsibility, worked hard, and sacrificed for their freedom. That sense of drive and ownership helped them turn 13 colonies into a thriving nation.
That's what truly set America apart, the principle of personal responsibility. This principle is perhaps the greatest antithesis of socialism. In a socialist system, responsibility is collective, but as the saying goes, when everyone is responsible, no one is responsible. The founders believed each citizen had a duty to provide for their family, to care for their neighbors, and to strengthen their community through personal effort and generosity. By embracing these responsibilities, America stood apart from other countries and other economic systems and grew in strength and prestige around the globe.
Our founders never had to choose between capitalism and socialism because the terms simply did not exist yet, but their principles clearly defined what would later be called capitalism. They built a nation on the firm foundation of individual responsibility, free markets, and a belief in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
America's founders never debated socialism by name, but they defined its opposite in practice. They built a nation that trusted its people more than its government. That's why America grew stronger, freer, and more prosperous than any other nation before it. I'm Darrell Jones with the Herzog Foundation. Join us next time as we continue celebrating Faith and Freedom 250.